Hey friends, it's your brother Hampton. I have some tea today and I want to talk about communication. So ever since I've been young, people have asked me to phrase things for them. So I started off with friends on how they can talk to their other friends. But as I got older, it became adults and older adults who asked me for things on how to phrase this work email when they don't feel like they can come into work and friends and associates asking me how to answer or give a breakup text, things like that. And it really started to settle in the past couple of years or so. Because I used to always assume that people would say things in a way that they intended that truly reflected how they felt in all regards, including the phrasing. But when I talked to people on the other side, I said, did you mean for this to sound blunt? Did you mean for this to sound harsh? Did you mean for this to sound overly nice? A lot of times they're like, no, I just didn't know how to put it. So there's this kind of unspoken communication barrier, language barrier, even within people that can speak the same language, where people aren't able to truly express how they feel in a way that lands the way they intend to the other person. And that's when and if they care. Sometimes they don't care. They just want to get it out. Like, you're fired, you're done. I don't want to be with you anymore. And then there's, of course, the whole thing where you just ghost someone, which I feel like is partially related to that. I feel like some people who've done this, they don't know how to approach that conversation. They don't know how to start it. So they just don't have the conversation and just leave. And I generally recommend people try to resolve things rather than just avoid it, because it usually sometimes will just pop up in unexpected ways down the road. So I started to write about this in my book, tentatively titled Mentally Fit. And it's a chapter called Empathetic Communication, where we understand how someone's feeling first, and then we try to communicate with them. So we first seek to understand, and then we seek to be understood. I think that's a quote from somewhere. And I started to try to organize that into this video, and I realized, well, it's gonna take like an hour plus to get all the points that I want. And also, I'm a little bit tired today, so I better do the communication video on a day where I'm feeling 100% and communicating well. So I want to talk about a more specific part of that chapter, and that is just connecting with people and phrasing things, or developing this skill in a way to where you can have better communication, you can better understand your friends, and hopefully they can better understand you. Those things go hand in hand. And there are two major parts to that, and these are both skills that can be developed. So it's not just one simple trick. I wish it was like that. But these are both things that we can work on, and through this process, we can develop better communication skills, hopefully. I don't claim to be a master of it, but it is something I actively work on, and it's something that's really helped me be able to communicate in different venues. So especially if you're a younger person watching this, or my age and older, there's people of different generations who feel like they can talk smoothly with their friends, but they have trouble communicating at the doctors. They have trouble communicating in more formal context. They have trouble communicating in class because they're afraid people may misunderstand them, or they may feel not ready to talk and write or just communicate in general in those contexts. So hopefully this will give you a greater ability to do that in different contexts. So one part of that is, in order to express what you mean, first you have to understand what you mean. And this is why the first chapter of the book is introspection. I've talked about this before, where we have to try to develop some self-awareness, both ongoing, as in who we are, maybe how we appear to others, but also just an understanding of how we feel about different contexts as we go throughout the day. Like, I like this scent. I don't like this color. It's a good day. It's a bad day. It's like, yesterday was an okay day, today was a little bit better. Things like that. As throughout the day, we have to understand how we feel. And as we deepen our connection in understanding how we feel, but also how to phrase that, how to express how we feel to others, this can improve communication. That's one side, introspection. And the other side is extrospection. I wish it was that simple. Maybe that's a word, but is understanding others. So we have understanding ourselves, but an important barrier that I think a lot of people sometimes skip or they disregard because they don't feel like is important is understanding the context through which we have to give that message. So we can understand how we feel and then we can say it, but sometimes depending on how the other person is feeling, how the other person understands our context, how the other person is feeling that day, it may not land the way we expect. And I'll give some examples. So to understand ourselves, we'll start with that, is something that some people may struggle with a little bit. And that's a deeper topic, but I'll talk about how to express how you feel to someone. So that's something that a lot of people struggle with because I feel like they go for they assume they can't. And as a result, the ability isn't as developed as it could be. I notice this a lot with younger people. So like, not surprisingly, and that's not a dish towards younger people. I think it's younger people of any generation. We learn to express ourselves better as we get older. So like a very common thing. If you're under 20 or so, you can talk to people over 50 and you ask, have you learned to communicate better? Have you learned to express yourself better? Have you learned to, like, was there anything you wish you would have spoken up to when you were younger that you now have the ability to do so? And a lot of them will say yes, I think. A lot of them over time accumulate and understand themselves a little bit more and accumulate different skills and accumulate the ability to communicate better. So this is definitely a skill that can be acquired, but you can expedite it a little bit. I know there's a lot of people, 13, 14 or so, they fall more into this trap, me included, where it's kind of cool among your friends to be like, yeah, dude, I don't know, right? You know, like, so we kind of joke with the, some people use it ironically and some people use it actually, but it's like, on God, for real, things like that. And they don't know quite how to express themselves. It's a little separate topic, but they are not entirely sure. So it's more common when you ask them their detailed opinion on the topic for them to say, I'm not sure how to say this, but I feel like they could. And whenever I notice this with friends or children of friends, I try to push them very politely and nicely, because I don't want to intimidate them. I try to push them. I say, no, I feel like you can express how you feel. And sometimes I can help them out. So just to give a random example, because there are so many things we can delve into. Communication can apply to so many different things. But I want to just talk about something that a lot of people may relate to. Let's say frustration with a parent. Not liking a parent, not loving a parent, not dealing with, unfortunately, some parents who are not the best parents, but just frustration, but an otherwise healthy relationship with a parent. Some people may say, well, I get along with my mom, but sometimes she feels overbearing, and I don't know how to express that. So how someone might start that is, I would say, they can do it by themselves, or they can write it out, they can talk to themselves. But when you run into those barriers, it's kind of like feeling for something in the dark. I don't know if it's like this for everyone, but this is how I think we learn to construct sentences and learn to articulate our thoughts a little bit more. When we run into these roadblocks, instead of saying, I can't quite feel it, so I don't know, start looking a little bit further, right? And this helps when it's low pressure, when you're doing it by yourself. Think about something, a detailed topic that you want to express your opinion on, and try to express it in one sentence, or 2 or 3 sentences if you want to go a little bit more. But something like your parents, you might say, well, I feel like while I love my mother, and she worked hard to, let's say in this case, it was a single mother, or maybe she was the breadwinner for the family, and she worked hard to supply for our family, and I had a good life, and I'm going to college, and now I have a better job and had some opportunities she didn't have because she worked so hard. However, at the same time, while she did work long hours, she would maybe sometimes use that as an excuse not to spend time with me and my siblings. And because of that, she now is a little bit surprised where our relationship isn't as close as it could be. However, I do want us to be close, but I feel a little bit misled, or I feel like it's unfair when she says that we're not making time for her when she didn't make time for us, even though she could. She used her job and she used tiredness as maybe sometimes an excuse when she could have spent extra time with us, kind of like she wants to spend time with us now. But I'm willing to make that bridge. So that's a very long verbose thing. But you notice that I kind of made that up as I went, because first of all, I don't have siblings, and I don't have, I had a good mother, and we all have issues, but I didn't have that particular issue with her. I kind of made it up as I went. But you notice there are pauses in that, and those are very important, because I'm thinking about how I go. And I could just I could just say, I don't know, or I don't know how to say it. But the same thing I tell my friends, you do. Think about it a little bit more, because you do know your thoughts, or at least you know how they're not supposed to be. If someone were to say, so what you're saying is you hate your mom, you'd be like, no, right? So it's kind of like people who say they aren't good with music, but they know a wrong note when they hear one, a very wrong note, certainly, usually, unless you're tone deaf. But usually people understand it enough to like, well, no, you know yourself enough to know when you're misrepresented. You know yourself enough to when the phrasing is very off. So you're just looking for things that aren't that can give you some confidence. You have the phrasing, you have the way to articulate your thoughts inside you, because if someone were to do it wrong, you would know to point it out. You're saying, no, that's not what it is. So you know what it's not, so you just gotta find what it is. So that's the first part, is learning how to express yourself. And I wish I had a more solid base that I can give you like a list of steps, but it really is just kind of learning to feel for those words and not giving up, right? It may take you a few hours. Some people learn to get this and they start developing it. And you'll notice you'll get much better at this over time, because you'll learn these phrases, and these phrases will connect with feelings, and you'll know how to use them in the future. A very common one nowadays, not necessarily bad, but it is used a lot, is I'm not comfortable with that. So you learn the feeling of not being comfortable with that, and then you say, I'm not comfortable with that. Separate discussion, but yeah, that's a good thing to have. That times 100, 200, several thousand different phrases, and then you'll learn to build the habit of connecting certain feelings with certain words. And that's one of the ways you can develop your way to articulate your feelings. Now, the second important part, I'm gonna speak while I check the camera, because it's Coffee with Hampton, and I'm allowed to do stuff like this. When I can't do it on my main channel as much, but I can just kind of check to make sure the camera is still recording, and it is, and my memory card's almost full. But thank you for watching Coffee with Hampton. I really enjoy doing this in kind of a more casual manner, because I can still get out a lot of thoughts that I have in a format where I don't have to be as produced and precise as I am with some of the main channel videos. I'm gonna sip some tea. But talking about how you feel is one part of it, but it's also important to know how they feel. So in this case, it's kind of like, so I won't go too deep on this, but the reason it's called empathetic communication. So the book has different skills we can develop, like patience, forgiveness, honesty even, introspection, in this case communication, but I add something to them because I feel like these sometimes are misunderstood. So patience becomes strategic patience. You're not always just being patient, you're also working towards the things you want to work at. Introspection isn't just introspection. It's not just thinking and overthinking. It's experiential introspection, so you learn through experience. And communication is an empathetic communication. So you speak, but an important thing similar to the exercise we just did is, and you can practice this with maybe, it works better in the format of a debate perhaps, but you'll see how it can be applied a lot more loosely and casually, just a casual conversation. When you can articulate not just your own thoughts, but you can articulate the person you're speaking to, their points, and repeat it back in a way that you find to be how you understood it, but it's also in a way that they would find agreeable. That's a difficult skill. I would say probably the first part is a little bit easier, and you should learn to master that. But the second part, the way you can repeat your, so it's like your opponents in a debate, your opponent's argument back to them in a way that they find agreeable, can be pretty difficult, but it's something that I think that we can learn to practice. So in this case, you know, let's say you say this to your mother and she says, well, you know, like whatever it is. And let's just kind of imagine what's her response. You see, this is kind of hard because communication can apply to so many different things. But I feel like this is a topic that a lot of people can visualize something because we relate to it to some extent, perhaps. And she might say something and then she's like, okay. And you want to say it in a way that doesn't make them angry, because if you just want to make them angry, then you can skip a lot of this stuff. If you don't care, you can just be like, yeah, hang up, done. You know, there's sometimes do that in telemarketers, right? There are times where you don't need to communicate to the max. But in this case, we're assuming that you want to communicate and get something from that communication, perhaps a better relationship with your mom. You might think, well, mom, so, okay, I think I understand better now. So you're saying that you think I'm accusing you and being unfair by saying that you worked hard, and even though that I said that you worked hard, you don't see some of the things that you did behind the scenes. You don't see the many times that you tried to go to this recital or school play, but you got there late because your job asked you to stay late and you needed that in order to pay groceries. So while you are saying that you think I understand how hard you worked, but because I was a child, I don't fully understand how hard you were working. Not only that, but some of the relationship problems between you and dad, maybe as a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, when we were going through that, and later on smoothed out, you don't feel like I really saw how hard it was. And you think that all of that is kind of a sideline, because even if that weren't true, you want a better relationship with us now. You want to spend more time with us now. We know we love each other. We're agreed on that. But even if you were neglectful earlier on, it's hard to use that word, but if you didn't spend as much time with us as you could have, you want to spend more time with us now. And it's kind of in the past, but right now you definitely want a relationship, and you would like for us to move on, regardless of how we interpret the past. So that's a long-winded way to express and understand someone's mother's potential response. But if you can say that, and that's a way that she agrees to, that you gotta avoid using perhaps like overly sensitive language like neglect or abuse, even if you feel that. And again, that doesn't make it any less true, right? So it doesn't, like, you can say it in a way where they first agree with that, and then you can build on top of that. Then, if you want to argue, depending on your relationship with your mother in this case, when again, it's going to be mostly loving. So, like, if you were more angry, you can say, well, what you call being busy, I call neglect, right? So, like, that could be a much more thing. So, like, after you establish the common bond, after you repeat it back, and she says yes, right, and even going on. The opposite of straw manning someone, where you can steel man, sometimes I hear, where she is not sure how to express herself. She goes like, I don't feel like, maybe you can jump in and say, you don't feel like it's fair that we're treating you in a way that you find to be less compassionate now, because we feel you were less compassionate in the past, but you've improved now. You're trying to be better now. You're trying to make up for lost time. And she might go, yes. When you do that and you offer the person you're talking to a step up, a way to help them express themselves to where they're not even sure what to say, but you offer it and they go, yes, that can really help connect that. Because after you establish that bond and they feel heard, they feel understood, then you can build on top of that. So then you can go, no, you were neglectful, you were an abusive thing. I'm sorry if this triggers anyone, but as you can see, it's a very common issue. There's a lot of people who have some grievance with their parents, even when they love them. And in this case, loving, right? You can say, okay, I understand that. And while it might be a little bit hard, then it might be a little bit hard for me to immediately become best friends with you, especially now that I have my own family. I also do love you, right? And then maybe you can connect over that. I also do love you, and I would like to spend more time with you. It might take a little bit of time for us to get used to this, because we went through the first 20 years of our lives seeing you an hour or less a day. And now that you've retired, you want to spend several hours a day together. Maybe we can meet up for lunch a couple times a week, and we can start there. There we go, right? So this is a very idealized communication style, but you can see from first learning to express how you truly feel, the nuances of it, because you could just be, Mom, I don't want to hang out. Like, Mom, I don't have time for that. I don't have time for that. And then she's like, but I made time for you. And you're like, no, you didn't. So you say these are much simpler things. These are it's funny because we have, as a society, kind of glorified or cheered mic drop moments. So where it's you think that, or you're wrong. Boom. By the way, I am just against dropping the mic. Not even metaphorically, I'm against literally dropping the mic, because as someone who is really into sound engineering, if there's a sound engineer with headphones on, it's gonna go, and it's not very pleasant to them. And also, there's there used to be this sound engineer joke where anyone who's dropped a mic has never had to buy one, which isn't necessarily true, but mics are expensive. Poor mics, I recommend, set it down. Just be or just say mic drop. So then you can set it down or hand it to the engineer. So I recommend that. So you can skip a lot of those things if you don't care. You don't have to always go the diplomatic route. Once again, communication covers a lot of things. It's not always, I have a more diplomatic communication style, to no one's surprise really. I try to find common ground. I try to go for peace when possible. I would say that's appropriate for a lot of things, but not always. There are some negotiations. There's some people that we may not always want to talk to, and that's understandable. It's understandable. So, but first, express how you feel. It's a skill. And then learn to understand how others feel and express it in a way that both you and them find it agreeable, probably them, and then you can talk about the discrepancies. Then you can say, here's where I think there is an issue with the way, with your interpretation, or here's how you see it and here's how I see it. And when you have that, when you do want to deepen the bond, when you do want to communicate more deeply with someone, you can use it for like deciding where you want to go out to eat. It doesn't have to be something as serious as I was talking about, right? Then you have the option to communicate in these different contexts. Then you can apply that, through workplace, through your romantic life, and through your friendship. I hope that can help. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if you want to see more videos like this. And thank you for listening, because I was a little bit tired today, and talking about this made me excited. So thank you so much for watching. Have a beautiful day, my friend.